Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. I'm going to cover a couple things today I saw in the nerd news out there. So let me put on my nerd glasses. I can't see with my glasses on. Anyway, all right. So first of all, here's how the GDPR is already changing web design. So just in case you don't know, the GDPR is essentially the European rules for personal privacy on the web. So it's forced a lot of companies to curtail and limit how they're tracking you from website to website with all these cookies. If you don't know what cookies are just little pieces of text files. They're just tiny little text files that tag your browser so that they can see which site you're going to, what ads you're viewing or clicking on, et cetera, so they can repost ads in front of you. You notice if you go to a website, let's say you go to Amazon, you look at an ad on some product, whatever it is, a book or something. And then you go to different websites and you're going to see ads for that book or ads for that particular product you were looking at on Amazon or on B&H Photo if you're into cameras and sound and stuff, et cetera. So that's one of the things that these cookies do. So in this article on Fast Company, I get a stream of articles coming in, my Google News, so I just keep tabs in terms of what's going on. And essentially they were quoting in articles from Reuters showing that cookie-related ads were down 22%. I'm not going to go through all the details, not important. The larger point here is that they're talking about how a lot of these websites were discovering that, I'll just read the last paragraph that summarizes this piece. In other words, the modern web is bloated with unnecessary features. Geez, I wonder who was telling you that. Anyway, the GDPR may be flawed and it may not be as effective as it could be, but at the very least, it's getting many developers to clean up their code. So this is a theme I've scratched upon on more than one occasion where young nerdlings, intermediate level developers, people with 3 to 5 years experience or so, they have a tendency to want to over-engineer things. And with regards to not just in all aspects of the code, the front end, the back end, all over the place. And so one thing I keep stressing, one of the key principles of good software architecture, of good coding, is that you keep your code as clean and as simple as possible. It's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine who works in the enterprise, meaning very large systems. And he works for a huge bank up here in Canada. And he was talking about how he had implemented a module, wrote some code for a very particular, for a very major application that they have at this particular bank. And it was only about a month or so later, he had to go back and revisit it. And he had forgotten everything, just a month later. And the code that he wrote, he'd forgotten, poof. And this is not uncommon because if you're an active developer, you're writing lots and lots of code. And so you're going to forget things. So to prevent that, or at least to minimize you forgetting what's going on, he told me it took him like an hour or so just to figure out what he wrote just like a month or so ago. So the way that you deal with that is you write very, very simple code, as simple as possible. That's such an important thing. Number 2, you want to have self-describing code that, the method names, the variable names, they describe what they do, and you should have some decent comments. Now, ideal code has no comments, but if you have a piece of software that you've written, a module that you've written, and it has dependencies, meaning it depends on this type of configuration being set, or that type of, or that library being available, et cetera. You should maybe put a little note, comments in the header of your code module, of your object, et cetera, just so that it's there, it's neat, et cetera. So for example, yesterday I was doing a little bit of database maintenance on an installation of Studio Web, and thankfully, last time I did this was about a year or so ago. I had created a help doc essentially for me because I wanted to check into that code. I wanted to have a record of what I did, back then and why, and what are the steps I've taken, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to pop that open. So not only did I see the code, but I had a few comments telling me that were dated, telling me exactly what was I thinking at the time and why I did it and for what reasons. Super useful, super useful. Saved me a lot of headaches, So back to this particular piece here, the GDPR, basically the European rules in terms of people's privacy on the web. It's forcing web developers for major sites to reevaluate what they're doing and the complexity of their front-end code. And they're starting to realize that it was a lot of over-engineering, a lot of silliness. They saw that they were using third-party trackers and stuff that didn't really do anything in their day-to-day. We had an issue like that actually recently with Studio Web 4, where my lead developer, he wanted to do some heavy-duty tracking in terms of users. I won't get into the details, but in fact, he wanted to implement a NoSQL database for this particular, for tracking this particular set of data, user data. And it made sense. That's where a NoSQL database made sense. Basically, it's lots and lots of data where we didn't need to track references to other pieces of data. It was very simple. It was very simple data to track, but lots of it. So that's where that type of stuff really comes in handy, the NoSQL database. But at the end of the day, I said no to that because it wasn't pertinent to the application. The use case of Studio Web, the case in which it is used, why we use Studio Web, why we have that SaaS, why is that software in existence, what's the point of it, and tracking all that kind of data that he was proposing that we tracked was absolutely useless regarding the use case. It's kind of cool. Ooh, I could look at all this stuff, but it didn't really have any impact in terms of why the whole thing exists in the first place. So I nixed that. Why? Because a basic rule I have in software development I came up with many years ago. Unless there's an absolute need for a feature or function, don't implement it. Don't implement it. Don't put things into place, functionality into place that you think you may need. You may need. That's no good. The may need function implementation is a bad function implementation because, and when I'm talking about function implementation, I'm not talking about actual functions. It could be objects, it could be modules, who knows, Don't put things into your code unless you absolutely have to, because the less code that you have and the less complex the code that your code base is, the better your code is, all right? You know what, there's so many other headlines about coding and software and so on, but you know what, I'm gonna leave it to another vlog. All right, I hope you found this one useful.